This is the CreaseCast.
Breaking news. McDonald's Canada is bringing back the Smarties McFlurry after 6 long years.
Okay. This is good.
Is that-
We're going to start our episode right here because for the longest time, whenever I'd go through a McDonald's drive-thru and I'd be like, hey, Roxy, I know you hate McDonald's, but do you want a McFlurry? Because that's the only thing you'll ever eat. And she'll always be like, do they have a Smartie McFlurry? So I'll ask them.
Oh.
And they'll always say, oh, we don't have it. But
they have M&Ms, don't they?
This was like years of them being like, oh, we don't have it. But if they knew it was like a global thing or like a nationwide thing where they're like, oh, we don't have Smartie McFlurries. But if anyone asks, you tell them we just don't have it right now. So they keep coming back to ask. So that news deeply upsets me because I feel like I've been lying to Roxanne for this long. And that's unacceptable to me because, you know, maybe I have gone back to McDonald's a couple of times because I had hope that maybe they would have a Smartie McFlurry and I could surprise Roxanne. But it was a lie. It was a ruse.
Now you can. Now you actually can.
Out of spite, I don't even want to go there now.
out of spite, I might go.
Yeah.
I might go get it. I do like Smarties better than I like M&Ms. With the exception to the rule being peanut butter M&Ms are a just S tier candy, fantastic candy. Not the peanut.
You like Reese's Pieces though? Because
I don't like Reese's.
Thing.
They don't taste the same. Reese's Pieces and peanut butter M&Ms, there's a clear difference between the two. There is a very clear difference. The peanut butter M&Ms are clearly the better one. I can
all M&Ms taste the same though.
I can eat Reese's Pieces in a pinch, but if peanut butter M&Ms are available, I will go there every time. Peanut butter M&Ms, they're the perfect mixture of... Yeah, you know, like if I need it's my go-to movie snack. What can I say? Peanut butter M&Ms are my go-to movie snacks. Not every movie theater has them.
That's just a really funny phrase when talking about like shitty candy. It's like, no, pinch, you know, if I gotta eat those.
Yeah.
You know,
gotta make the sacrifices sometimes.
Yeah, you gotta make a tough sacrifice. You know, you gotta put your head down, shovel a garbage pail full of peanut butter M&Ms in your mouth.
In my mouth, yeah. Fun fact, just before we go into the actual hockey stuff today, Smarties are actually not a thing in the States. That is a thing that people do not often realize is there.
Neither are ketchup chips. Or salt and vinegar or all dressed, which is very bizarre to me.
Yeah, you can actually get all dressed Ruffles now in the States, but they brand it, but it's specifically like
Canada flavor
branded. Well, yeah, it's specifically branded as like the number one flavor, as like this is a very popular Canadian flavor, and there's hockey on the bag and stuff too, right? For these like American Ruffles, they're not as good as the Canadian ones made in Canada, but they're still like good. They're still good.
It's bizarre though because it's like ketchup chips is like synonymous with like chip flavors in Canada, like. It's like usually the discussion is, all right, what's your favorite chip? And people will be like, it's either ketchup or salt and vinegar or plain or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But like when you talk about ketchup chips to like Americans, they look at you like you're from another planet. Like ketchup on a chip?
Well,
it's nonsense.
Americans acting weird about foreign things? Wow.
Yeah,
I never thought I'd see the day. What's really weird about the Smarties thing is that they do actually have a candy called Smarties, but what are called Smarties in the States are what we call Rockets here. So like those little candy, those little chalky
sugar things.
Those little like chalky like things that like you get like used to get like Halloween. So those in the States are called Smarties. So it's really it gets confusing really quick.
That's
the closest thing. For any Canadians, the closest thing I've found to Smarties in the States is birthday cake M&Ms. If you get birthday cake M&Ms, they taste close. They're the closest thing you can get. Okay. But enough about smart things. Let's talk about the
snacks
NHL.
That are only available in one side of the Parallel 49. We're here to talk about the Vancouver Canucks. Big cue up, Alexa, please play like whatever Vitamin C graduation or whatever sad song you want, because the Canucks got knocked out of playoff contention. It was a long time coming. It was like the slowest Band-Aid peel of all time. Nobody expected them to even actually realistically have a shot at playoffs after the COVID shutdown. But Connor McDavid decided to, help shepherd things along a bit and embarrass them in Edmonton. And then the other night against the Winnipeg Jets, as JT Miller is taking his 12th penalty in as many days. The Habs go to overtime and knock the Canucks out of contention. The season's officially over. It's now play the kids season. It's draft position season. It's basically every season but playoff season. The season was a wash. But we get to choose the infinity blocker for the games. Whee!
Yay!
Hooray! Kind of a tough thing to do because I know I've watched these games start to finish. I almost can't even remember a single thing from yesterday's game, which happened less than 24 hours ago, and the Edmonton Oilers game where Connor got his 4 points. I don't know. Do you have a guy in mind? Outside of your boy, Neil Höglander, it's tough to pick a guy, but I don't know. Lachlan, do you have a choice for your infinity blocker? Do you want to do both games or do you want to just do one?
Let's do it all in one go. We can do
the past, however many games I've missed covering on the show, because obviously I missed last Friday's episode. So let's just go. I guess that's 17 games in the last 5 days. So
pretty much.
So over the last 17 games that I missed, who is your infinity blocker choice?
You know who I'm going to give it to, and this is not really based on the last 4 games as much as it's been the whole season leading up to this point where the season's now, even though there's 5 games left in this complete, somehow 5 games left in this terrible season. There is one person who we have not given the infinity blocker to once all year.
I know who you're going to pick, and he was going to be my second pick.
Okay.
Tyler Grayovac.
You hit it right in the head. No. As much as I am on the gravy boat here, I'm going to give it to a guy who has worked through adversity all year against all odds and has done the best he can with the group he has been given, and that was Travis Green.
Oh.
I'm going to give it to Travis Green because this team had no business being in the playoff race as long as it was, and as much as a lot of that is due to the fact that, you have players playing above their heads a little bit at times, doing the best they can under given circumstances. I think the fact that Travis Green was able to keep them even-keeled for as long as he did, and through a COVID outbreak, through just all the worst odds, while being a lame duck coach with having no contract extension, which I'm sure we'll talk about later in the show today.
Yes.
The fact that they got all the way to 5 games remaining and still had a shot at the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's a lot to do with coaching. And I think Travis Green has done the best he can. He did the best he could under these circumstances, and I think he deserves a hat tip just for what he was able to get done this year.
Yeah, it's kind of the same as last season, right? Where he took a team that arguably probably shouldn't have done as well as they did in the playoff bubble and pushed arguably one of the best teams in the league to a 7th game and managed to ride a goalie that was running so hot that he literally broke the psyche of the Vegas Golden Knights and ruined their chances against Dallas of all teams.
Incredible.
That's amazing. And the fact that he came back without his number 1 right pairing defenseman, without his best 3rd pairing defenseman, without his number 1 winger that they picked up in the trade deadline in Tyler Toffoli, without a bona fide 3rd line winger, Josh Levo. The fact that he got his team, like you said, to within 5 games, it was a complete long shot, but the fact that they were still so close to maybe having an outside shot with the lineup that Jim Benning has put together for this season. It's nothing short of amazing. When Willie Desjardins comes back next season, I don't expect any kind of similar result.
Why would you put that evil out there?
I'm kidding. We both know it's John Tortorella coming back for round 2.
Round 2. I said that on C4 yesterday. It's time for round 2.
We'll get into that a bit later. But I completely agree with your blocker pick. Like, the poor coach, man. Like, you can see a lot of like situations where coaches are completely checked out. They don't buy into the whole playing the kids, give kids a chance. He's going to play to win no matter what. So he has a better stance for contract renegotiation or like a team that's, poaching him from elsewhere in the league. He has every right to just play all his vets and not play a single kid in his lineup, but he is still sticking to the process that got him the success he has over the past several seasons. He's throwing Jack Rathbone out on power play 1 as a one-timer option. He's basically telling all fans he wants to get Gadjevich a game, but he just wants him to get his legs under him after quarantining. They're calling up Will Lockwood too, apparently, for, I don't know, maybe the second to last game of the season, the last game of the season. He is so ingrained in just sticking with the process when he has no reason to. He could completely phone it in. He could pull a Tortorella and just basically lean on the bench with his, chin on his fist, I guess the season's over. Edler,
I've done every episode.
23 minutes.
Yeah, I've done every episode for the last 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. Just well, yeah, Canucks.
Here, I can lift the armrest up and just go.
Yeah.
But
yeah, props to him. Yeah, there you go. There's the Infinity Blocker graphic. If you're following us on our YouTube channel, we post every podcast in YouTube form where you can see our lovely bedrooms where we are recording. I have my Dyson fan in the background rotating, which is kind of distracting if you're watching, so I apologize, but it's very hot today. It's gorgeous out, which makes tonight's current 3-0 shellacking a bit rough if you elected to stay indoors to watch this game instead of enjoying the gorgeous weather we're having in the lower mainland BC.
Yeah.
So other than, the last couple games in which the Canucks, got bounced from the season, there's still some things to talk about. So we haven't really actually had a chance to talk about this with each other because we've both been very busy. But your boy, Nils Höglander, kind of had himself a little bit of a game the other day. Would you care to chat about Neil and just what he was accomplishing in an otherwise completely lost and miserable season against Winnipeg the other day?
Yeah, multi-goal game for him. First youngest player, I believe, to have that. In quite a while, or at least since I think Pettersson was or Quinn Hughes would have been the last guy to do it or something.
We can go over that list. The list of the youngest rookies to have a multi-goal game. Top of the list, Jared McCann. My God.
Old Jared. I wonder what he's up to now. How's he doing these days? What AHL team is he on? Oh, wait, I'm getting word that he's a crucial member of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
He's the highest scorer on the Pittsburgh Penguins that still has Crosby and Malkin. Oh my God.
Oh, I'm sorry. The division-winning Pittsburgh Penguins. Oh boy, with Jeff Carter scoring 4 goals recently.
Thank you, Jim.
Yes, thank you, Jim. But with Höglander, he has been making the most of a tough year.
Yeah.
He is really he's getting better as the season's gone on. It's kind of incredible just how much hockey he's already played this year, considering he started playing 20-something games in Sweden. moves up to Vancouver, goes through everything else that came with this season that every player did, of course, on the Canucks, but but doing it while having moved, learning a new language, meeting new teammates, getting used to a whole new system of play, smaller rink, everything else. He's gotten to the point now where we're nearing the end of the season, and he's playing arguably better than he has all year. Like, he looks the most comfortable. Yeah. He looks like he's able to lead the play. I mean, I think he has, 6 points in his last 5 games? Something like that,
yeah.
Something nuts like that.
It's very encouraging because, you add the games from his SHL season, and you're like, okay, so this is how he rebounds in, an 82-game season. Like, if this was a regular year or a full 82-game NHL season, he's playing his best hockey right now. I mean, obviously, when he first started and came into the NHL, he was a fucking firecracker, just annihilating the league, looking like the best, legitimately the top 3 forward, maybe arguably top 2 forward on the team. And here he is, just resurging again and being the one reason why the Canucks are even in games or at least staying competitive. So that's great because there's a lot of players on the Canucks team that have only played, 45 games, 46 games, and they're looking completely out of it. And this is after, as we've spoken many times, a big, giant COVID outbreak. And the fact that he's just acting like nothing's wrong with him, skating his wheels off, battling for pucks, throwing hits, eating hits, scoring 2 goals in 1 game. I mean, that rocks. Dude rocks. Big fan. And I mean,
he's rolling.
It's the one glimmer of light, really, for Canucks fans. Him and the next player we'll get into, and and we'll get into another one, but one of your other boys who's also found a resurgence in his game as of late. Maybe not, I guess not tonight, but the Edmonton game tonight. The other day. Yeah.
Yeah.
But your boy,
he's look good.
Thatcher the Snatcher Demko.
Thatcher the Snatcher.
That's his nickname, right?
I don't remember. Oh, man. I hope not. I certainly hope not. Let's make that sounds real bad.
It's better than Dempsey or something stupid that Canucks players.
Oh yeah, what did I believe Quads said something tonight about Highmore's nickname is Heisey. Of course, Jack Rathbone, and this could be. I'm going to go on this tangent right now. Oh my god, hockey players need to get better at nicknames. I am so sick of these garbage ass nicknames that players give each other. They at the beginning of the season, they were calling Höglander Hoggy, and then being oh, it sounds really a lot like Huggy, which we already call Quinn Hughes.
No kidding.
And it's interesting. It's almost like you give all of your teammates the exact same style of nickname. It's either they add a Y to the end or they add an SY to the end.
Or an SY.
So in this, so you'd
be Irvsy.
I'd be Irvsy.
Or Loxy?
Or Locky or something. It'd be something very stupid. You'd be Sievesy.
I mean, I would just be Cody. Or Cody.
You'd be Sievesy. Yeah, oh, absolutely. I would put money on that. You would be Sievesy, 100%. It is so bad. I don't get it.
I think I'd make it my duty if we return to normal and I get to an Abbotsford, whatever the hell they're going to be called, game into the locker room. Be like, okay, I just need to clear this up. Would it be Sievesy or Codesy?
I would be a good article.
Or just CV. But I think is it CV that sounds like an insult or something, like a British insult. You
skeevy. You're thinking of skeevy. I think you're thinking of skeevy.
I am.
Yeah.
Skeevy.
I will
with his hair right now.
Yeah, I will say today that I was thinking about if they name the team the Abbotsford Arrows, because that's the one that keeps coming up. I was like, if that happens, I'm only gonna call the arena the Arrowhead Pond of Abbotsford. That's all I'm gonna call it forever. Just like the old Ducks arena. But yes, players need to get better at the damn nicknames. I wanted to call they call Tyler Myers Mizey, which is just awful. I said they should have called him
Heisey is like the worst. Heisey is awful.
Heisey and Meisey, like, oh my god, they're exactly the same. They're exactly the same nickname. Oh, it's so bad. I actually wrote an article at the beginning of last season, saying here are nicknames for each of the new guys coming in, and I suggested for Tyler Myers T-Rex, and I think that's a much better name because
you know what they do though?
Long legs, short arms.
They would call him Rexy,
which would be better.
But yeah, it would make more sense. But
that would be way better.
Or they'd be like Giraffe, and then they'd be like, okay, it's Raffy. It's like that's like the brain power, right? It's just like, okay, well, Giraffe takes too much to say, so it's got to be Raff or Raffy, because like Bonesy for Rathbone is like, I think you pointed this out on Twitter, or maybe it was in our DMs, but you're like, there already was a Bonesy for like this group when they had Nick Bonino on the team, so it's like they're just recycling the names.
Yeah,
it's like there's a magnet board on the side where they're like, okay, Bonesy, that's going to be for Rathbone. Bowie or Horvat, you're just going to be Bowie now. Like, it's painful.
Bo Horvat and Alex Edler have already lived through a Bones. They already had a Bones teammate. Like, terrible.
Yeah, we could go on. We could probably spend a whole episode just on like. Yeah, we might have to do like a Patreon episode where we just talk about like the awful nicknames they're going to have for next year. When like when Pod Colson comes in. Podsy?
Or Pod. They'll probably, for him, they will probably just go Pods. They would just go Pods with him, I think.
Or Colsey. Might be Colsey, actually. Colsey
and Cole Lind will just be like, what is this?
Oh my god, yeah.
Cole Lind. You're Lindsay.
Yeah, Lindsay. Yeah. Oh my god.
This is we're great at this. They should hire us for nickname writers. And, the Winnipeg Jets scored again. Psyche. I believe that's a hat trick for Blake Wheeler. Because this is a rare time where we're recording an episode mid-game. We never do this. That's why you can
tell like our pure ADHD energy, because we're just like, we don't want to talk about the previous games because all it leads to is just bad news. And we don't want to talk about the current game happening right now as we record live because it's miserable and bad news. So we're talking about Pod Colson's nickname. We're going to have to co-sign this with the Canucks Conversation boys, who are big Pod Colson fans. Maybe they'll be on board with Colsey. I don't know.
I hope not. No.
It's just better. Like, I think better than Podsy or Poddy, because it would be one of the two. Poddy would be horrible.
Bonesy and Potty.
Because that's the only options.
They flush the competition.
And then when you get Jonah Gadjevich up, it'll be Gadgy, which is okay. That sounds kind of cool, like Gadget or something.
Inspector
like
Gadget,
all right, or Gadger. But then you get Will Lockwood, and you're like, you call him Willie. Locky.
Yeah, it'll just be, Willie. If we ever have him on the show, it'll just be Lock and Lock just hanging out.
Hell yeah. That's actually pretty cool. But like, the nickname options for next season and even later this season are just awful. And
at least they don't call Demko Dempsey or something. At least we can hang our hat on that one.
I bet they tried though. I bet they're like, someone was like, "Hey Dempsey," and they're like, "It's Demmer," and they're like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, Demmer's not. You're right. Demmer's not much better. Way off top. We've gotten. Demmer sounds a little better.
Here, we'll quickly get into Jack Rathbone. Let's get into Jack Rathbone because he is playing power play 1 minute. He's got his first. He got his first goal. He had an assist too, I think. Like
we've talked about it a little bit.
Much, I think we talked about him before he was making his debut, and we were like, best case. Oh, they just scored again.
They just scored again. Oh dear. Again. Well, anyway, with Rathbone.
For Rathbone, like we said, he has the wheels, he has the skating, he has the offensive IQ. It's just about whether he'd be put in the situations to actually, utilize his skill, and would he be able to, maximize like his utility to the team if he's actually stuck with like Tyler Myers, because that just seems like a match made in hell. And sure enough, they paired them together in the first game, and Myers played like he didn't want to fucking pass the puck to him whatsoever. And Rathbone still found a way to score points. And it was without Myers. It was basically just him working with the forwards, and it paid off. Tonight, they were like, okay, the Myers Rathbone experience that can't be a thing. They did this last night as well.
No.
They were like, let's throw Rathbone into the deep end. Let's pair him with Hamonic and see how he does against top competition to see what we've got for next year. Again, kudos to Travis Green for actually being like, let's see what we got in this kid who's honestly showed very well, to the point where I'm like, it's a shame they didn't get more games out of him.
Yeah,
like, I really wish he was up or like playing earlier this year, because he was far and away the best player on the AHL team. With the Canucks, it's just like you could have used his skating. Like when him and Hughes are out on the power play, like zipping slap passes like cross ice to each other, like no problem, and then hounding on pucks that get away from them. Like it's just like they could have used this so badly during that beginning February, March stretch where they just looked awful. So a bit of a kind of wasted opportunity, right? It just sucks.
Yeah, it's about as close to a 5-forward power play as you might get from the Canucks. Like that's right there. That's pretty much it. With Rathbone playing on the power play, like it's huge that he's getting those chances already, even with the relatively sheltered amount of ice time he's been getting. I mean, he did hit 16 minutes yesterday. I don't know what he's logging at the moment on this game, but the fact that he's getting these opportunities so quickly as a young defenseman are like about as quickly as Hughes did last year. That's incredible. Well, I think even Hughes, it took more than 4 games before he was playing power play 1. I remember at the beginning of the year,
Green's whole thing when Hughes made his first like official debut, like for a full season, it was like, okay, why aren't you getting Hughes on power play 1 or power play 2? He's clearly the best skater amongst all the defensemen. He's got the offensive IQ. Like, just throw him on the power play. I don't know why you're sheltering him. And Green's learned, like, to his credit, he has learned since then already, because he saw what Rathbone could do on the back end and said, yeah, okay, let's throw him on the power play. Our power play is struggling. Let's get this kid out there as a one-timer option, which speaks to his faith in Jack Rathbone's one-timer, which is not what you'd ever expect out of Travis Green with any rookie. Like, Jalen Sheffield took basically Edler taking a game misconduct to crack 15 minutes in a game. It took the most sheltered of opportune minutes to get Ua Levy over 16 minutes. Like, it basically took injuries to get these guys minutes. And then here's Green basically just openly praising Rathbone after a few games, the same way he did Quinn Hughes. But back then, he told people to be patient with Quinn Hughes and he'll get there eventually. And here he is now being like, yeah, he looks fine. I'm going to do it. Like, that's a big testament to what he believes in this kid. And it's a major, major boon to the scouting staff. Hashtag thank you, Judd, for this pick that has now probably cemented himself as next year's second pairing left defenseman. Like, that's a huge find for this team that needs cheap, fast, and talented defensemen for the next coming years, now that Pettersson and Hughes are going to be off of their ELCs.
Yeah. If you look at the defense core as is right now, if you told me that next year the Canucks would be going in with a top 4 of Hughes, Schmidt, Rathbone, and we'll say Hamonic for now, because Hamonic seems like a guy that most people want to come back. That's not terrible. Like, that's not awful. Like, another year older of Hughes and Rathbone, another year of experience on their resumes, and then you have Hamonic and Schmidt up there who could arguably both fit in with either of those two relatively well. That's not a bad-looking top 4. It's not. It's not perfect. It's not the strongest by any stretch, but it's pretty darn good. It's just a matter of, can you find some people to put in that third pairing that won't be as big a black hole as, say, Edler and Myers, because the problem is that's kind of what's tripping them up right now, is the fact that under no circumstances are you putting Edler and Myers together on a pairing. So, and until Edler's off contract, and he might come back too, you don't know. What are you gonna do? Because you can't keep them together. So that's kind of getting in the way of progressing with a better looking top four. So what the Canucks need to do, if they're gonna if they're gonna go out looking for anything in the offseason, it's another year of, can we find somebody kind of structured who can sit in that third pairing? Or if you really want to get interesting about it, you could say, okay, Hamonic and Myers get stuck on line 3. We put them on the third pairing. Can we find an upgrade on Hamonic for the top for like our second pairing, like a cheap, decent upgrade on Hamonic for Rathbone, like as a partner for Rathbone? Because ideally, again, Hughes and Schmidt should be playing together. They complement each other well when they're playing at their best. I think they complement each other. Although, again, that being said, Hughes and Hamonic played pretty darn well together at points this year. They were not bad. They were not a bad combo. I think you can find something out there if you find the cap room to get it done. That's the hardest. That's kind of the easier said than done aspect of it. But overall, I think the fact that Rathbone is here and already arguably their second best defenseman right now is maybe that's a testament to the fact that they don't have a great defense. Like, their defense is just relatively weak. But it's not really... But at the same time, Rathbone is doing very well against NHL competition, and you can't discount that aspect of it. So I think the fact that he has looked this good, this quickly, and the team is arguably looking a little bit better defensively, not including this 5-0 game.
If you ignore this one.
Yeah, just we'll call this one a bit of a wash. 5-0 with 5 minutes.
It doesn't
to go.
count because we're not really paying attention to it. So
if you don't see it, it does not. It didn't actually happen. That's how things. That's how object permanence works. They overall, I think next year when you come back, when you give him the off season where he comes back, he knows he's got a spot on the team. He'll come back stronger and a little bit better. Yeah. And you could be looking at a decent top 4 going into next season, which is
your left
something
side looks way stronger than it did when you were just like, okay, it's Hughes, Levy, and some
Edler,
like Bowie, or 39-year-old Alex Edler on a league friendly or league minimum deal. That's pretty ugly.
Ew.
When you start off Hughes, Rathbone, it feels a bit better. You feel a bit more confident that you're actually going to get offense and good defense from those two, especially the way that Rathbone's played recently. Maybe the expansion draft also, maybe there's a way they can upgrade both the left and the right side, and suddenly you've revamped your decor without the risk of investing high in new contracts, but maybe on old deals. That's always a possibility.
This is the chance to do it. I mean, the way if you got to approach the Seattle draft like this. There is not going to be another one of these for a very long time. It's not like in the Vegas case where you knew a 32nd team was going to come along sooner rather than later. They weren't going to stick at that odd number for forever. Yeah. You knew someone was coming. With Seattle, this might be the last one ever. Like, the NHL might never go past 32 again. So your best...
The only way they would is if there were 2 additional ownership groups looking to invest in teams at like $1 billion price tag, which, like you said, that's big ask.
Even then, they might not do it just because they might not feel they have the talent to the talent or the playoff structure or the schedule structure to complement 34 teams. So you have to assume that this is going to be the last one, at the very least, if you're Jim Benning, the last one in your tenure with the Canucks, because no new teams are coming for a long, long time. So you have to see this as, okay, this is your last chance to really take advantage of this expansion draft opportunity. And there are going to be some deals out there for players that normally you would never get in a normal season. You would absolutely, under no circumstances, ever get. Yeah. You saw it already with Hayden Fleury getting traded to Anaheim by the Hurricanes. It's It's just it's frankly just this is what you have to do. You just have to find a way to take advantage, and you could very easily make particularly that right side look a whole lot better, and then really improve one of like the biggest deficiencies on your team right now.
Yeah, because especially like now that I think that they've gotten a few games out of Cole Lind, they know what they've got in Levy. They should probably know what they have in Gadjevich. Like Thomas Strands put it in a piece in The Athletic today. Like at this point, you're not protecting any of them or Tyler Myers at this point because like you can afford to lose them. Like Cole Lind, that skating speed isn't there, and you can't be like a top six upside player with like the offensive potential, but you can't skate there. That's tough. And if you're getting benched for Matthew Highmore in the top six, like that doesn't really bode well for your chances either. He might be able to be a contributor, but like obviously like just like his deficiencies like were kind of highlighted in his past stretch of games. Like he did some things well. I thought his defensive game looked better, but obviously it just wasn't up to the speed that they really were hoping it would be at. And to the folks listening to this that are thinking Jonah Gadjevich is going to be that guy instead, well, if this is me complaining about Cole Lind's foot speed, like I got some things to tell you about Jonah Gadjevich's foot speed. So yeah, if they're not protecting any of those guys because they can afford to lose them, like Myers' contract, if you can give that to Seattle for free, my God, you take that opportunity and you run with it. So that opens you up to take on other people's players that they can afford to lose because they don't want to lose someone better. Take that second pair. We talked about this ad nauseum, so I won't go into this, but this is definitely an opportunity for Jim, who, I mean, I'd be curious about the numbers on this, but I feel like he's one of not many GMs that are going to be leading their team through 2 expansion drafts in one tenure. Like, I think
Yarmo, I can think of, like, let's see, Yarmo,
Kekalainen, Treliving.
Dubas was not there yet. I think that was still Lou Lamoriello for them. Don Waddell no, because Ron Francis would have still been the Hurricanes. Now he's the Kraken. He's the Kraken
Bob
GM.
Murray might have been, but like that's what I mean. Like it's like it isn't a long list of GMs who have basically set their teams up to be prepared for 2 expansion drafts. The Canucks really had nothing the first time in the Vegas one. They they exposed Brendan Gaunce and Luca Spiza.
And
that's it.
And who else? They also, I think, was it Thatcher Demko was the other one, or that might have also been.
I don't think
because
so.
The goaltending would have been it would have been Anders Nilsson. It would have been Anders Nilsson. That's right.
Yeah, but like that just speaks to it. Like the best players they had to offer up were Lucas Spiza and Brendan Gaunce, who's like at most like a 4th line center in the NHL who can't produce, which is like it's whatever. But this season they might actually have some assets that might be good in the right scenario, but at this point you're not getting much for them. If you can get something better out of it, then go for it.
Last time the Knights saved them from a bad contract in Lucas Spiza because that was all they had. This time around, it's not so much the case. I mean, if you're lucky, the Kraken will. I don't think under Alexander Mandrake they're doing this, but maybe if you're lucky, the Kraken go. We're taking Tyler Myers. It's like, I'm going to say I don't think that's happening unless the Canucks offer a very sweetheart deal to get rid of him. What are you? Yeah, you have the option. The keys are right there in front of you. I mean, you lose tonight 5-0 now. The final there, Connor Hellebuck with a shutout. You don't have the pieces there that you shouldn't be crying over parting with. You know, there isn't anyone there that you should be just like, we have to protect them at all costs sort of thing. No, there are guys there. There are clearly guys available, and you should got to play your cards correctly
outside of the main guys you're protecting, you're not exactly crying over the types of types of players that are going to be exposed at this year's expansion draft. But anyway, that's enough on a topic that we've talked about quite a bit in the previous episodes. So why don't we get into the NHL and other news around the league since our last episode?
There's been a lot.
Connor McDavid, I think he's at 455 points after a few games against Ottawa and Calgary. Hart Trophy, like all but guaranteed. No point in even having a vote.
But Cody, listen to me. Sidney Crosby has done way more with the Penguins than Connor McDavid has with the Oilers. Also the North Division is like super easy. You shouldn't even 100 points in 53 games. Like, what even is that? That is, believe it or not, there are people who exist. There are people who exist and think that is actually a legitimate thing. Like, there were some people in Pittsburgh who are seriously going like, just like people anti-Pittsburgh bias again. Like, it should be like, what are you talking about? Like, yes, Crosby's been very good with a bad team, sure, with an okay team. Well,
they're not even that
bad team. They won a damn division. Shut up. Shut up. Terrible.
Letang has turned his career around and had like nearly 50 points this year. Like,
Evgeny Malkin is still a thing. Bad. Yeah, like, they're not a bad team, and whereas the Oilers are in a situation where I believe McDavid has 100 points, Draisaitl has close to 80, and then I think the next closest forward, is at like 30 something. It's like not close.
Completely hard carrying his team with offense. So
yeah,
it would actually be really funny though if for the second year in a row Draisaitl won.
Oh my god!
We know how amazing that would be. It would be so fucking funny.
That would be very funny. It would.
Or they gave it to Mike Smith.
Some real questions to. That's an actual take that some people have. Like, some Edmonton people have, is that Mike Smith has been the real MVP, which is just baffling. Like, I will say I'm stunned at how good Mike Smith is and how much he's confused me all year.
Sure.
And just, like, thrown me for a loop. But, like, oh my god, no. How could you give it to anybody other than Connor McDavid? So yeah, just looking at their points totals, they do have two defensemen who have more than 35 points, which are Darnell Nurse with 36 and Tyson Barrie with 46. But, oh my god, like, Connor McDavid has 102. I believe he has the best, like, points per game average for, like, adjusted for era since Wayne Gretzky a bunch of times and Mario Lemieux.
Yeah.
I think, like, which is incredible. Pretty that's good, nuts.
Yeah.
Like,
pretty good company.
It's incredible. He deserves, like, as much as I'm, like, absolutely livid that he scored 4 points against the Canucks to get the 100 point against Vancouver, and now I'm gonna have to watch that highlight for the rest of my damn life, and that's gonna just make me mad every single time I see it. Like, holy cow, incredible!
I was rallying you up pretty good when I was like, Demko sucks, AHL goalie, and you were like, no.
I was like, I don't need this. I'm gonna kill you. Like, this is like, it's not his fault.
It's not his fault. McDavid's really good, and he's really trying for 100 points.
He was,
and he got him before the third period. Like,
oh yeah,
like that was just unreal.
Like, well, like as much as I can and make jokes about how this scrub stole my jersey number and everything. Like, for the record, I had it first. And I was making jokes about how I was like, I'm just glad he's acknowledging the rivalry that he and I have had. He didn't know we had for about 7 years now. I'll say this. The fact that we get to see Connor McDavid, like, in his prime and that we're covering the sport in this era right now is amazing. And it's like, we have never seen a player like this before. Like, we've seen Crosby, we've seen Ovechkin, who are both incredible, and we've talked about at length on this show before how much they've meant to both of us, because we both started really getting into hockey right as their careers were beginning. With McDavid, it's just a whole other level of like you can't believe what you're watching. Like you feel like you're straight up seeing a guy real life using cheat codes like you've
Yeah.
never seen before. And getting to like cover the sport for a living and do this and get to talk about it while he's playing is unreal. Like it's incredible being able to watch him in your own division as much as we get to, and just seeing just some of the crazy things he puts on like this, like 100 points in 53 games. Like I can't even say it. It's so nuts. Like imagine if this was an 82 game year. And now I do want to pose a question, like just because people are asking it anyway, even though I already think the answer is no. This is and it's a very stupid conversation. A lot of people are trying to take away the fact that for him, like they're trying to stamp an asterisk on his points, just because they only played in the Canadian division. I think that's bunk, but like I don't know. What do you think different from what, or do you agree with me on that one?
There was, I wish I saved this tweet, but because I like a lot of tweets, so I can't even check it out. But it was like someone in the media basically posted the splits of all the teams against McDavid, or where their stats would be if they hadn't played McDavid, and it was like Ottawa had a -7 goal differential against all non-Oilers games. Against the Oilers, against the Oilers, I'm just that shocked. Against the Oilers, they were a -39 in goal differential. I think it was against Jacob Markstrom. He had a .943 save percentage against all the leagues, but because he played against McDavid 12 times, his save percentage is at where it's at right now, which is like 900 or something like that.
Yeah, like, it's hovering.
You can't be like, he's at the benefit of playing against North Team divisions. Like, no, some of the North Team divisions have really good goaltending and good defensive teams, and he is just laying waste to them by himself. Like, it's unreal what he's accomplished, basically. And like, I mean, if it was the Pacific Division, like you throw LA, Anaheim, and San Jose against McDavid, he's probably got 120, 130.
Yeah.
You were terrible.
Oh yeah. And the thing that I think gets lost in all this as well is and this came from a conversation with my dad where we were talking about this, right? He was like, well, like you play the same amount of teams so many times, like it's easy, it becomes like easier for you to like or like if you play, because he's playing them so many times, they're not getting as like up for that game sort of thing, whereas if you're playing it like a pair where you're only like have 2 games against the McDavid Oilers, like you're much more like ready to go. And to which point I argued that the fact that you have so many opportunities to play Connor McDavid means in reality you should be able to put in more time to figure out how to stop him.
Yes,
and yet that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed anything.
He's gotten better.
He's gotten better.
Gotten better as the season's
exactly.
gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Like he's gotten way better. The fact is, like, the fact of the matter is, if this were a normal season, maybe like a couple more good teams would get a shot at him. But then you also have to throw in the fact that he would get to play Detroit and who else was really bad this year? There were a couple. The Devils. Like you throw the Devils in there. There are a lot of teams that are just as bad, if not worse, than some of the teams he played in the Canadian division this year that he would get shots at too, and you can't discount that fact just because he played the same 6. Like, I think you're right in the fact that he probably, if this were a normal year, he were playing regular teams, I don't think we'd be seeing anything much different. It might be higher. Like, it's incredible what he's done.
Yeah, straight up. Okay, on to the NHL news.
Meanwhile, the second overall pick is not having as good a time.
We can talk about the other NHL sad club, the Buffalo Sabres, who got kind of put on blast by their star center. Allegedly, according to Mr. Eichel, he had a neck surgery planned on a herniated disc, and the Sabres medical staff said no. or they're dawdling at least to the point of him not being able to get the surgery that he needs on his very, very injured neck, the neck injury that took him out of basically the second half of the year. And then he said in his like post-game exit interview, he's like, with losing sucks. I'll come back next year and try and improve wherever that will be. Basically saying, I'm basically get me out of here.
Yeah, the full quote is basically, so this has a lot to do with his injury. His injury, because he's been out since about, I want to say like
it feels like
mid-March. Yeah, it's been a while since now. The full quote of his comments was, I've been a bit upset about the way things have been handled since I've been hurt. I'd be lying to say that things have moved smoothly since my injury. There's been a bit of a disconnect between myself and the organization. It's been tough at times. Right now, the most important thing now is to get healthy and be ready to play hockey next year, wherever that might be. Yeah, he's gone. Like, I don't think there's any sort of... He gone. Like, he'll never play in this for the Sabres again. Like, you can take that to the bank pretty much right now. Because, so, I listened to the Staff and Graph podcast today, with Rachel Dory and Mike Stevens, and Rachel was actually talking about how she's dealt with similar like neck issues as he has as well, or at the very least, like she knows that like it's like something whatever the injury is, supposedly it does require surgery to do properly if it's the injury they think it is, and the Sabres have not been allowing him to go get this said surgery. Even though he got a second opinion, and apparently this surgery is like super risky and tough to get done, but it's a last resort, and it's meant really only as a last resort. But also, it's one of those things where it's like surgery is kind of the only way to really fix it properly. You can't really rehab it; it only just delays things. So the Sabres, potentially, despite all that, have said no. To the point, which means that he doesn't have any faith in like the medical staff and what they're doing with anything, which is a huge, which is always good. You cannot come back from that. Like you absolutely, like it's one thing for your team to be bad. If you don't trust the medical staff or the team for having your best interest health-wise at heart, no, you're never going back to, like this goes for any of us. If we believe that our work doesn't care about our health, and just didn't believe, would you go back to your job? No, you'd quit.
No.
Like, you'd never go back to that. Absolutely not. It's pretty darn clear at this point that unless something drastic happens, and even then, say, I don't know, they fire everybody in the medical department, which doesn't sound like the Pagula's way of handling things. He's never coming back. They're just absolutely not. Never, ever, ever. You're not going to get him to come back, put on that uniform again. He clearly has lost any faith in it. And now your trade value's gone down because you didn't bother to... because now it's out in the open and every team is going to be like, oh, cool, you're in a terrible situation. Here is the biggest low ball and a middle finger for you. And they kind of deserve it. They deserve it at this point. Like, the Sabres are a mess. Are an absolute mess and a joke of a franchise at this point.
Pretty much, yeah. Nothing really to add on to that. Like, Buffalo continues to be a tire fire. It's unfortunate for the fans of Buffalo, but
there is one thing I think we can add on to that. Like, where do you think he plays next? Like, if you had to pick a team, where do you think he's going?
I think he's going to LA. I think LA they'll have the cap space, and they have such a deep prospect pool that they just loaded their AHL team with, that they could arguably send 4 center prospects and 3 wingers and still have shitloads to spare. I think I pitched this to you in a DM that one of the pieces going the other way to Buffalo will be Tyler Madden, just so that Vancouver is somewhat involved in what happened.
Hey guys, you could have had Eichel. No.
Yeah, you could have had Eichel with that trade. No, but it's
whoops.
It's totally gonna happen. It's just the way it's gonna go. I can see it happening. They'll give up like Rasmus Kupari, and they'll somehow they'll somehow keep Quentin Byfield.
Yeah, I
And
think Cab
they'll pull
Robinson was
Eichel.
floating that yesterday.
Yeah, like they'll keep their best prospects, pick up Eichel, shed a bunch of other, second tier prospects, and come out looking golden. And then that'll be the Canucks killer for the next, 8 years.
Yeah. I mean, they have Arthur Kaliev, they have Alex Turcotte. Jeez, Akil Thomas. Good Lord.
Their
like,
depth is
they're
just
so disgusting, yeah.
And we've talked about this a lot on our show. It's just like how they basically they started their rebuild like 3 years ago, and in that brief window, they managed to accumulate like 5 or 6 first rounders, 7 or 8 second rounders, and they're all playing in professional hockey for their AHL club. The AHL team sucks. Like, it is awful because, as you would expect, it's a bunch of children playing against grown adults, but they're putting them in that situation to develop against pro hockey players.
Yeah. So, and even next year they have St. Louis's second round pick. They have Toronto's third round pick. And they don't have their own fourth rounder, but they do have Calgary's. So they're doing a damn good job. Calgary's, which will be pretty high just because they didn't make the playoffs either. So
it's an unreal rebuild, like what they've
done an exceptional
period of time. They sold off all the right pieces to sell and sold high, which was brilliant.
Jake Muzzin was a very good trade for them, and it worked out for the Leafs as well. Like, that was one of those trades that I would argue did really well for both teams, and both teams found what they were looking for. The Kings did very well in the long run on that one.
Agreed.
And Jack Campbell, I think, as well. I think also in that, because they've done a couple trades with the Leafs and the Kings that have worked out between both teams. I would go in a different direction than you right now, though. I would say that more likely he ends up with the Rangers. And I think that's because they have a little bit more. They're you know what? The Kings are in no rush is the big thing. The Kings aren't in a rush to get anything done. They're fine biding their time and letting the team develop and letting the seeds kind of grow, right? Whereas the Rangers, I think, despite the fact that they are arguably behind the Kings in terms of their rebuild, like a little bit, like they don't have as much in the cupboard right now. I think they're more desperate to get back there right now, and I think we kind of saw that last week. One of the things I forgot to add to our list this week was that they fired Jeff Gorton and John Davidson. James Dolan, we talked about the next podcast I've been listening to on Off the Post. He is now fully involved with what's going on with the Rangers, which is not good if you know anything about James Dolan and his history with the basketball team. And in a way, now you're looking at a situation where Chris Drury, I think, is their GM now.
Yeah.
And they're arguably more desperate now that James Dolan is there. Clearly the message is we want to get going a lot faster, and we feel like we are done with the rebuild part and we need to get going.
Yeah.
So I think it's more likely that Eichel ends up there. As we know with Dolan and his history with the Knicks, they're big game hunters. They like to go spend a bunch. They will have no problem cashing in a bunch of signing a huge checks to go get the biggest fish on the market, sort of thing, right? So I would not be surprised if they go in with a huge overpay to try and get Eichel to the Rangers. And that might be Lafreniere, that might be Capo Caco, that might be Pix, which, again, overpayment probably for one guy, especially if you wait it out and let them figure it out, especially because, Lafreniere hasn't been fantastic. He hasn't been crazy good this year. He hasn't been a world beater like I think a lot of us thought he was going to be right out of the gate.
I think he has less goals than Nils Höglander.
There you go. And Capo Caco as well, kind of in the same boat. Another guy who's kind of started out a little bit slowly. Not bad. They haven't been bad. They just haven't been as fantastic as people were expecting, just straight out. I would not be surprised if the Rangers went and tried to go, maybe pushed a little bit over the edge and were like, here, we'll give you the farm. We'll sell the farm right here to get Eichel on board. Because, hey, with Panarin, with Zibanejad, he might be a very good fit there for them in terms of getting to becoming a playoff team now. It'll shorten their window, surely, like in terms of what you could do in an amount of time. But that I argue, I think for them, I think especially for them, I think they're going to be more desperate to make that move than the Kings are. And I think the Kings at the end of the day will be like, well, we don't feel like overpaying for this. We don't feel like paying this high. We'll just wait it out. We think we're going to be fine with the group that we have on board as is.
Yeah, agreed. Off of our fellow sad club, playoffs are set basically in the South in America. Yep. So why don't we quickly get into our picks for who we think are going to win each tentative matchup that are set? Because I think there's 4 set right now. I don't want to get too heavy into them because I've got to get back into tracking. But we'll quickly go over the Friday.
We have Friday. We have Friday before the playoffs start as well. Yeah,
we'll probably get the other 8 matchups or 4 or however many there is.
North is I will add the North is officially set as of now because the Jets won tonight. They have clinched 3rd, so they will play Edmonton and the Leafs will play Montreal in the first round.
Okay, well that's fair. So then we'll just stick with the 2 Central, the 2 East for now. Okay. Carolina, Nashville. Two pretty legit Twitter.
Holy
Twitter
Nashville
handles.
Came out of nowhere.
Yeah, they kind of just went from like being way below Dallas to just surging off of the strength of Jussi Saros and Pekka Rinne kind of regaining his form as well. And boom, they're back in the playoffs just like that.
Yeah.
I love them changing their Twitter handles to like the best, like to Carolina flair. And I think it was New Jersey flair. I can't remember who, but it was like, they're basically just changing it to whoever it was beating Dallas so that they would be like, we have a chance. That was really rad.
I think Dallas eventually responded and put up like a green version of the Hurricanes logo on their their profile. You mentioned Jussi Saros. Like again, this is how little attention I've been paying to the Predators and arguably the rest of the division outside of a couple teams. He quietly, like we talked about him at the beginning of the year. We had Brian on at one point, who I meant to text before this show actually. We talked about how he had started out really slowly. He had not been good for the early part, and people were already like, well, he's not the starter of the future. He's not there. He's got a .927 save percentage now. Out of nowhere. That just came completely out of left field. He almost single-handedly got them back into the playoff conversation, and now here they are. They're going to be playing Carolina, which, again, one of the best teams in the league. I believe they're tied with Vegas for the President's Trophy right now. And they need the Knights, I think, to lose out their last game to win it. They have done the Predators getting in, despite all the fact that we thought they were going to sell at the deadline, that they were going to go in a completely different direction. The fact that they got in is impressive enough, and they're kind of playing with house money at this point. Yeah. Carolina, on the other hand, is an absolute just titan. Yet an underrated titan even within their own division because they're in a division with Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
They are such a well-oiled machine. They're top to bottom depth, very good. They're young, they're quick. They get scoring from absolutely every direction. It is going to be very hard to unseat them in the playoffs. Their only weakness that you're going to be able to get them on possibly is goaltending. Specifically, not because they're not necessarily inconsistent, more because Peter Mrazek is a bit of an injury risk, and that's really hurt them a couple times before. Sometimes he comes up a little cold as well, but overall, that's their only Achilles heel. Aside from that, they are a very, very good hockey team.
Yeah, this should be like a pretty exciting series, I think. Just because, like you said, I think Petr Mrazek is playing very, very out of his mind to the point of where it's like, at what point does he regress and come back to his normal self of the previous years where he isn't playing out of his mind? Nashville is always a complete 50-50 for me. Sometimes they have these playoff series where they look like they could beat anybody, and then some years they have where they just look completely checked out.
Yeah. You know what we're not realizing here, actually? So we mentioned Mrazek. We're both talked about Mrazek here. He has not actually started the most games. He is not their starter. He has only played 12 games. The actual starter with 23 games played this year is Alex Nadalkovic.
Because
who has a 932 save percentage, 15 wins, 5 losses.
Because I've seen Mrazek's his page or whatever on like the stats page of NHL.com, and it's like goaltending, and it's like Petr Mrazek #1, and I'm like, oh, I guess he's really doing a lot for them. But now that I know he's only played 12 games, I'm like,
he does have a 923 in the 12 games he's played, so he has been very good. But James Reimer has played 22, so he's also played more. I imagine this is likely to do with injuries again as well. With Mrazek, this is injuries. But 22 games for James Reimer, he's still floating a 906. Like, but Alex Nadalkovic, just another guy who, again, kind of came out of nowhere. Like, he was been in the Charlotte Checkers system for quite a while now, doing pretty well. Came in every now and then as a third string. They might have actually solved the goaltending thing. Now that I talk about it, never mind. Never mind. They don't have an Achilles heel. They're just the strongest team out there. Besides, in the East,
playoff goaltending is like a completely different beast than regular season goaltending. All it could take is one really bad game, and then the coach sells and goes to like old reliable veteran, and they still get killed. Happens all the time.
This is why we need Sarah Siv to come on the podcast. We need Sarah Sivian to come on here.
She follows you, so we gotta make that happen. We gotta do it before the playoffs start.
We'll work on that. We'll work on getting honestly, I want to get a bunch of people in here, like a bunch of playoff bound people in here to talk about their teams.
Well, maybe
again, in Canada, we don't know much about the teams outside of a little bit because we've been so focused on what's going on up here that we just don't know as much.
I know a bit about the next two teams because
as do I.
I've been covering their farm team, which is an amalgamation of these two, which is Florida, Tampa. So I'm going to be very excited for this series only because it'll be very funny if the team calls up, Grigory Denisenko, and then they call up like Boris Kachuk, and then they both slide in from like Syracuse Crunch, a team they've played together for like the entire season, and then they play against each other in the NHL in a cup game, or a Stanley Cup playoff game. So that would be actually like really funny, just like the storyline of like all these like prospects that might like through injuries, notwithstanding, like whatever, like they got into a game and they'd been teammates the entire year on their farm team. Like that's really fun. I feel like this is probably Florida's to win. They've been just on a heater all season. Speaking of on the strength of goaltending, they have been getting unreal goaltending out of Chris Drager, out of Spencer Knight. Bobrovsky.
Sergei Bobrovsky is also there.
He's also a goaltender.
He
plays in net. But
exactly.
like that's going to be like, it's one of those
I love all my
three
goalies
versus,
equally. Earlier that day. I don't care for Bob. That's pretty much where they're at.
It's like one of those three goalies versus Andrei Vasilevsky, right? Like it's
what an absolute heavyweight for goaltending. I am so thrilled for that one. Yeah. I don't know if you've watched any of like the clips because this is also a little bit of an interesting fact is they're going into a 7-game series, right? They've also just finished their season playing 2 back-to-back games against each other. Yeah. And it got ugly, which is incredible. Can we talk about the fact that this is the first time these two teams, and I know I talked about this on the last podcast a little bit, but I'm excited to talk about it with you, that this is the first time in over a quarter of a century that these two teams have been around that they are finally going to play each other in a playoff series. The Battle of the Sunshine State. Finally.
That's like surreal. Like, how is that even possible?
Literally every single time that one of them was good, the other one was awful. Yeah. Like, every time. Like, I don't think the Lightning and the Panthers have actually made the playoffs in the same year that many times. I think maybe like 95, 96 is the one year they both made it. The Panthers went to the final that year, got swept by the Avalanche, never really got back to form, and never really was that much of a threat again after, even with Pavel Bure on the team later.
Yeah.
Like, it very much as they kept kind of missing each other. Every time that one of them would get good, the other one would be on the downturn, and they just kind of just barely
They're
miss
right
each
at
other.
the apex now where they're both kind of good again.
They're both
good.
really good at the same time. The one X factor here in this series is going to be the fact that the Lightning get back Nikita Kucherov. They're getting back Kucherov again. Wow, he's perfectly healthy for Game 1.
What are those odds?
Wow! Like
no one ever saw this coming.
Who could have seen it coming? With the Lightning and the Panthers, I think this is going to easily be the best series out of all of them. Or I hope it is. I really want this one to be good. I think it's going to be incredible.
I think it'll be a fun series just because, like you said, the last 2 games, I'm pretty sure Florida shut them out one game, or they got shut out one game, and then the other game, it was like a 4-2 or 6-2 game. Like, so it'll be competitive, and they've
been fighting, and there's actual like hatred between these two teams. Again, never met in the playoffs, never had a real reason to actually hate each other because they've never really been good at the same time. And now you're going to get a full force of it in 2021, which is incredible. I think that I agree with you. I think Florida's going to win. I think they're finally going to exercise that demon of no playoff series wins since they went to the Cup final. One thing before we go to the next series, just to give the Lightning a little bit of props. They had last night. They started a line of Daniel Walcott, Matthew Joseph, and Jamel Smith. Believed to be the first all-black starting line in NHL history. Yeah, which is great. And fantastic.
I can add a bit of context as well. Daniel Walcott has been like a grinder for them in their farm team for the last 6 seasons. He's pretty much only been ECHL, AHL depth basically, but apparently one of the hardest working dudes in the gym. He is alternated between being a defenseman and a forward, which is pretty much farm team speak for he's not very good at either. And so they just put him where they can basically get the best out of him. So the fact that a rover is getting NHL time and getting rewarded for 6 years of just grinding in the AHL, that's awesome. And the fact that he gets to do it on a line that breaks barriers and makes history for the NHL and for his team, that's super cool. So props to those guys.
And it wasn't a meaningless game either because they were working to try and take home ice advantage, I believe. If they had won that game, I think they get home ice. So it wasn't it was just well, we might as well do this. No. Right. That was for an actual... There were things on the line in that game, which is great. Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah. Now a series I don't really want to talk about because it'll be probably the most boring series out of all playoff series. Pittsburgh, New York Islanders. I cannot stand watching the Islanders play. They're awful to watch.
They're
fun.
They're NyQuil on ice. They're awful.
They are.
Oh, me too.
I respect him as a coach and how he can get his teams to buy into his defensive systems.
Yes.
Unwatchable. It is horrendously boring. I cannot stand it.
Fully agree. 100%. Yeah. I have nothing against the Islanders as an organization, and the fact that they turned it around so quickly when they lost John Tavares and got as good as quickly as they did is incredible. Yeah. And a testament to just how well they've done overall, their system has done, especially under Barry Trotz and Mitch Korn, their goalie coach, has done incredible work reviving some careers and making Ilya Sorokin just into a beast.
Or getting Thomas Greiss a giant payday.
Thomas Greiss got a giant payday. Yeah. Robin Lehner got a giant payday. Simeon Varlamov has just revived his career there. Yeah. That being and Matthew Barzal, I could spend hours talking about how great Matthew Barzal is as a player. Yeah, being said, they're absolute NyQuil on ice, and they're one of those teams that I cannot want to succeed in any way, shape, or form, because if they do, every other team is going to start copying them and making for the most garbage hockey in the world. So I cannot help them win.
You cannot spell NyQuil without NYI.
Yes, that's incredible. Is that a shirt? That should be a shirt. We might have that in the merch store.
Anyway, NY logo.
Yes, Nike. They are absolute just a snooze. I never was that. Their series last year against Tampa Bay in the conference finals was awful. The worst. It was so boring. Like, I was just like, this is the worst hockey I've ever seen. I was so glad that the Lightning kicked them out. 'Cause I was like, Jesus, I can't take... If it had been them against Dallas, like, oh, that would have been, like, atrocious. That would have been, like, I'd be like, I will go watch anything else right now. Yeah. This is awful.
Speaking of anything else, let's move on to a more interesting series. Washington,
a much more
Boston.
Interesting series. Mm-hmm.
Taylor Hall. I saw the funniest tweet. It was like, Taylor Hall is, or it's wild that Boston paid a second-round pick to get Taylor Hall to turn into Taylor Hall again. Or he's playing like Taylor Hall. Like, that's a really funny tweet.
Interesting.
Washington...
Zdeno Chara.
I still feel like Washington has cup like hangover disease where they're just like, we won our cup. We have our core that won the cup. If we don't win, oh well, we still got one. It's still everyone on the team is basically who they had last time. Boston.
They have Zdeno Chara now though instead of Boston. That's a score one for you guys. No, not really. He's kind of slow and old.
It'll be a good emotional series because of the Chara versus Boston thing. Like that's interesting enough. But Boston's usually always in really fun playoff series, which is always hard to admit, but their series are always really fucking fun to watch. They're always really heated.
David Pastrnak in the playoffs is incredible and very fun to watch. I love David Pastrnak. He's just very fun.
Yeah, and they're very high scoring. They're getting really good goaltending again out of Tuukka Rask. They're doing it on like a D-core that's like basically a bunch of nobodies for the most part. Yes. Like it isn't really that there isn't no notables. There's no Krug. There's no Chara. Like they're getting a lot out of very little, which is like admirable. And their series against Washington have been pretty close so far this year. So I think it'll actually be a pretty close season or series. But of those four. Man, Florida, Tampa Bay is my pick. I think we had in our notes here, most exciting of the possibilities. Florida, Tampa, everyone here listens to this has to tune into it. It's going to be
incredible.
Unbelievable.
And Florida
especially when Kucherov shows up.
Yeah.
It's going
to be very good. With Washington and Boston, I will say this, if I have to give credit to the Bruins ever, which I hate doing.
If you have to.
They have provided a masterclass in how to keep a core from going stale. They've done a very good job at providing what do we always talk about here? Cheap usable depth. Is the problem for the Canucks, and it's been for a long time that they can never seem to find guys who can just fill the role for a couple years, and then you cast them off and let them go get their big paycheck somewhere else once you've upped their value in free agency. The Bruins have done an exceptional job at being able to keep that flowing and keep that door like a revolving door of new players coming into the bottom six and to their depth on defense, and kept the team from going stale, and every year getting a relatively equally good results out of that team, which is incredible with the core that they've had as long as they've had it. Outside of David really changed since they won the cup, since they beat the Canucks 2011. Not much. It's pretty damn close to the same thing. It's where you get into the Taylor Halls and the Charlie Coyles and those guys who they've managed to find a way to squeeze into that system, and it looks incredible, and they've done incredible work there. And I will say this, from a goaltending standpoint, I do want good things for Tuukka Rask because Boston fans don't deserve him and are constantly, literally, so many people, literally, the other day, I saw people actually tweeting at the Bruins, announce you're releasing Tuukka Rask. What the hell is wrong with you? You
they really
terrible
are bitter
people.
About the whole bubble playoffs thing, and it's
it's almost like Boston fans are the worst on earth. Who knew? Just awful. I want good things for Rask. I do really like him, and I want to see him. I wouldn't mind seeing him alone get a cup on his own merit, because he only has won once, and that was as a backup to Tim Thomas. I wouldn't mind seeing him on his own get his chance to actually be see, I am better than that guy ever was. I got you to multiple finals, and you guys couldn't show up in Game 7. Like I
What a
want good
shame.
things for Tuukka. I want good things for Tuukka. Like he deserves a lot better treatment than he's gotten. It's one of those cases that you don't realize how good you've got it until it's gone. Tuukka Rask might not be in the NHL much longer, so you better get him a win. And I guess that kind of leads us very quickly into our last thing. Like we kind of touched on Nashville briefly, and UC Saros. Pekka Rinne might have played his last game, which is crazy, like incredible to think about. It's been a decade since. Well, he's played longer in the NHL than that. Like he's a little bit. He was there a little bit before that, but he's getting older. Last year of a contract with the Predators. I remember watching him and just being like watching him play against the Canucks and how lights out he was in that 2011 second round against them. Like he helped. Like the Canucks probably would have swept the Predators right out of the playoffs had it not been for Tuukka. Pekka Rinne, both Finnish goaltenders. I'm getting my Finnish goalies mixed up. Pekka Rinne really cemented that franchise in a new direction and put them on the map for the first time. Like they would not be in the position they're in, where they're one of the most exciting franchises, most well-loved like franchises and like fan bases out there in the NHL nowadays, compared to if it wasn't for Pekka Rinne. He really put them on that path to that cup final, and the whole like hoopla around that, and how Nashville has cemented itself as a hockey town. That's a lot of that is due to him, and he'll probably be the first player that get from that Predators franchise that gets his jersey retired and all of those things, and holds every major goaltending franchise record. Like it's incredible what he did for that organization. We always talk about guys who do more than just win you games, like who really change the fate of your entire team and your franchise and the sport in that area. He's done that. Like he's on the Mount Rushmore for probably like Tennessee based sports teams, like undoubtedly.
Yeah, for sure. Last little bit of conversation we need to have before we sign out for the night. A bunch of coaching changes made, which is it's super bizarre because the Canucks still have 5 games left, that other teams are taking the steps towards next season. So Rick Tocchet out of Arizona, John Tortorella not getting renewed in Columbus, Rod Brind'Amour in this weird neutral zone gray space with Carolina. There's rumors of a 3-year deal on the table that he's taking a huge discount off of because he wants to stay in Carolina. Travis Green, still a complete mystery whether or not he's going to get re-signed.
Yeah. This is kind of a turn back to Canucks stuff, because this all of these conversations that we're going to have right here is like, they all have something to do with what could be going on for Travis Green, because they're all going to have direct implications in terms of who's available, what kind of contracts they might get, and how that might affect contract negotiations with Travis. I know Brind'Amour is already being brought up as kind of like well, here's what you're looking at sort of thing, because, I mean, the rumor is that he's only getting 1.8, which is, again, it's cheap, but he'd be taking a hometown discount, but he is still the coach of a team that might win the damn President's Trophy. So that's not nothing. It's not a complete like outlier. It's not completely unrelated. There is definitely something to that.
Yeah. It's also like unfortunate like for Green too, because it's like, because he's going to be playing out like the next like 5 games, like other teams who don't have coaches signed for next year are going to have, first dibs on like a Tortorella or a Tocchet or, whoever. And meanwhile, he's busy coaching meaningless hockey for a GM who can't get a contract signed for him. Like, that's a real big bummer for him, and it like completely kills like any kind of negotiating leverage he has. So that really sucks for Travis Green. And like as we started the episode, like he's done everything he can or everything he could over the last 2 seasons to win games with like a dumpster fire of a roster.
Yeah. And he had the quote today where he was like, I want to coach this team through the rebuild, get to a spot where we're getting some good young pieces and had a bright future. And I still have the same feeling. The big kicker being Jim said he wants me to coach the team, and we'll see where it goes. And I think Patrick Johnson quote tweeted that Ben Kuzma original and was like, I wonder who he's talking about. Like,
Yeah, that's
who could he be talking about?
That's the most polite shots fired towards ownership I think I've heard from a coach before, because it pretty much is just like, hey, the GM wants me. If I'm gone, guys, that ain't me. You can take it up with the guys upstairs. That's not my issue.
Oh, hell yeah.
I think I don't know about you. Maybe you're like I want to talk it in here. I want someone else. But I am of the opinion that Travis Green is a very good coach. I think he's turned chicken shit into chicken salad 3 years in a row, where arguably this team probably could have been like a bottom 3 team, and he's managed to get them to buy into his style of play. It's a fun way to play. They're very offensively oriented. Defense kind of takes a back seat a bit, but I mean, with the defense that consists of 800-year-old Alex Edler and Tyler Myers, what more can you do? It isn't Green's fault that, like, I hate seeing the tweets that say Green's systems are really bad for defense and that's why the team sucks. And it's like, no. The problem is he only has Alex Edler as his reliable defender, and he can't skate anymore. Tyler Myers is getting paid $6 million, and he can't fucking play defense.
And he just ignores the good player next to him like when he has the puck, because he has no awareness whatsoever.
I don't want to relitigate the Rathbone Myers theory because it is so painful. But I think he's done so much good with what he's been given. It would be a real shame if the ownership group decides to nickel and dime this coach that's gotten so much for them over the past few seasons out of their youth. To see him go to Seattle would be very funny, but at the same time, just more pain for a fan base that has experienced nothing but pain over the last 2 seasons, basically.
Yeah, where it would be awful to see him walk all the way to Seattle, as funny as it would be. Especially because the rumors right now are that if they don't get Green, they'll somehow instead go out and get a big name coach. It's like, with what money? You have money for this big name coach, but you don't have it for Travis. Like, what the hell are you doing?
The only reason I could see them doing that is if they were trying to save face on the fact that they felt they didn't want to pay Travis Green a lot of money, so they were like, okay, well, we're going to spend a lot of money on Gerald Gallant.
Gerard Gallant? Ooh. Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't be terrible. He wouldn't be terrible. I would still rather have Travis. Literally, I actually said this on C4 last night, that if I'm not getting Travis Green, the only other coach I would want out of the core group that might be available is Rod Brind'Amour. He's the only one that I'd be like, if Rod Brind'Amour is walking through the door, you could maybe convince me that it's time to move on from Travis Green. Other than that, no chance. Yeah. What Travis has done, and Travis is a very good coach. I will argue that I think his style of coaching could be a little more fun. I think it could be a little bit more offensively charged, but again, like you mentioned, they don't really have the defense to do that.
Yeah, with better players, I think his style would be fucking unreal.
Oh yeah, but like we crap on Toronto all the time. Like, in terms of, like, in this market, we dump on Toronto all the time for what they do. But their team, the way that they've designed and they've structured their team to play is incredibly fun. And I think the Canucks could be that kind of team that runs and guns in terms of their scoring and plays a lot more offensively charged, where they're like, we will beat, if you're going to score 7 goals, we're going to score 8. Like, they could do that if they had the defense and, like, the depth players that were quick enough to keep up with that pace of play. And I think Travis could do that. I think Travis could be the coach that plays that kind of fun style, but he just doesn't get to right now because what does he have? He doesn't have those. He has Tyler Myers instead of
Oscar Fantenberg.
Instead of Morgan Riley, you have Tyler Myers. Exactly. You could do a lot more. He could get there, but yeah, there is no reason why they shouldn't bring him back. I don't know. I don't like the people who are already saying, hey, guess what? It's time for John Tortorella round 2. I'm just like, please, no. Like, yes, I get that he's a reformed coach since the last time he was here, but I'm still... He has. I had Allison Lucan on the podcast before you were here about this time last year, who I'd love to have on again at some point to talk about the Jackets, because I think, again, the Jackets are a fascinating team. With Torts, he has definitely changed a lot from the coach that tried to beat up Bob Hartley outside the Flames locker room in 2014. He's changed. I think Bieksa talked about on Halford and Bruff that they wanted to keep he and the Sedins wanted to keep Torts around for another year. He's not a terrible coach, but I can't forget the first time around, specifically the part where he benched Luongo for a Heritage Classic game. I can't forgive that. That's Mike Babcock benching Jason Spezza, or like Mike Modano for his 1000th 1000th NHL game, and not him never getting there. Like that's like I can't forgive that. He should never come back to the Canucks, but he's done a lot better.
Also, the reason why that Trevor Linden really moved on from Tortorella is that he appeared to be completely checked out when he was a coach in Vancouver. He said as much in his postseason interviews when he was like, "Oh, the core is stale. There's nothing much I could really do. You got to basically overhaul."
I mean, he wasn't totally wrong on that one at the end of the day.
But it showed that when he was facing adversity as a coach, he would shut down and check out. This season, it was the exact same thing in Columbus. He had adversity with his lineup, and he checked the fuck out. So there is no guarantee that if he came to the Canucks next year, that he would see this roster where 87-year-old Alex Edler is again re-signed to a deal.
Hey, Eddie, long time no see.
Yeah, hey, buddy, you still here?
Hey,
huh?
again. You're back.
And he's like, I can't make anything out of this. I'm going to check out again.
Tyler Myers under a Tortorella system would be. I would pay to watch that. That would be very fun.
He would be pissed off that he can't block shots for a man his size. He doesn't know how to do it. He'd be pissed.
He might get him to stop sliding. Are we talking ourselves into this? No.
Let's not. Let's end the episode right
let's
here.
Not. No.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
No.
This was a really fun episode. We're not going to talk about John Tortorella anymore.
No.
We don't want to talk ourselves into it.
In all seriousness, I mean, there were definitely cases. You look at the way Columbus has handled some of these situations. They've lost Panarin, they lost Bobrovsky, they lost Dubois, they lost Josh Anderson. You go down the list of a bunch of guys, and apparently a lot of that's not actually due to Tortorella per se. Apparently a lot of them quite liked him. Apparently a lot of them quite liked him. I know you wanted to talk about Patrick Laine's experience this year contrast.
I'm all fired up and angry about thinking about Rathbone Myers and Tortorella coming back. I don't want to get into it because he ruined my boy. They made him hate hockey.
Literally that was the quote today, was it not?
3 points in a single game with Winnipeg, and then they traded him to Columbus where it was going to be a disaster from the get-go. They ruined him. He's such a good goal scorer. He is so bad at everything else, but he is so good at the one thing he does. They ruined him. They broke my boy.
Yeah, they did. What was the quote today? It was that did he just say he can't?
They were asking him if he was going to play the World Championships, and he said as much that he hates hockey. He doesn't even want to play hockey. It ruined the fun for him. He's got to reset his mentality basically to get back into wanting to play hockey again.
That's not
awful.
It's not what you want. What would the kids say? That's not it. Is what I think they would say.
But this was it, Chiefs. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the CreaseCast.
Oh, we had questions. Should I answer them?
All
really?
about coffee. Who gives a shit?
It's coffee. You know what? We'll answer the coffee questions on Off the Post this week.
Yeah, Andy, you're gonna have to subscribe to our $5.
We have one.
Actually, wait.
We have one hockey question. We have one hockey question. We have one hockey question from Caspace Wins Cups, Andy. Better NHL player in 5 years, Matthew Highmore or Jonah Gadjevich? I'll leave this one up to you for the first one. I think I'll leave it.
In 5 years, neither are going to be NHL players.
Okay. If you had to say, well, let's say who's the last? If this were Survivor rules, who makes it the farthest in 5 years in the NHL? I'm going to say Matthew Highmore just because I think the Canucks are going to give him more opportunities. I think his skating is a little bit more able to keep up than Gadjevich. Why?
Highmore is going to go further by Survivor rules because he has another year on his contract. Gadjevich's ELC expires. So by that metric
they'll resign him.
Will they?
RFA? Of course they will.
All I can say is tune into the next Canucks game when you see Gadjevich skate, and you'll answer all your questions about his skating and whether or not he can make it as an NHL player over Matthew.
I'll say Highmore. I'll say Highmore for now. I'll say Highmore. I think he'll make it farther.
It's a pretty good pick.
Okay.
Anyways,
fair enough. We're in agreement there.
That ends our actual NHL questions from the fans. Thank you, Capspace Wins Cups Andy, for your 3. Lachlan will slide in your DMs and talk to you about coffee all he wants.
Or at the very least, we'll answer them on the off-post episode this week or something. Yeah.
Yeah. Where can the fans find your your handles so they can ask you more cold brew questions?
Yes. More cold brew questions, like I'm drinking this Trenta right now. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Lach and the Crease. You can also find my writing at lachandthecrease.com, where I do North Division power rankings every single Sunday. I'm kind of late on this one because, look, it has been a stressful week for me because I do have an article coming out, a feature coming out on a different site. You might have heard of it. It's called Canucks.com.
I've not heard about this. But.
It's new. It's very new. It's like a startup. But not to sound like such a flex on that one. But yeah, I've got an article coming out on Canucks.com. I don't know when. It'll be out soon. It's I'm very excited for you guys to read it, and you'll have to find out what it's about. You'll find out what it's about sooner rather than later, I hope. And I was also on the C4 podcast last night, so go check that out as well if you want to hear more of my voice. I don't know why, but I don't know why you'd want to hear more of me, but you can. Cody, where can they find your work?
The fine folks can find me at Cody Severson on Twitter, cometsharvest.com. I apparently have an Instagram that I always forget about, but I don't know. Follow it if you want. I don't care. Don't forget, we have a Patreon available to you guys where we post exclusive content for 99 cents and $5 tiers.
Yeah,
we post
$5
great stuff.
Gets those
We've got
episodes.
The power rankings that Lachlan should be doing soon. Probably be doing some playoff stuff. I don't know. Who cares? We'll be posting on. We got some off-season content brewing where we'll be talking more ADHD shit like this episode was, because this one was a complete shit show. We also have our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe to that. We got everything in video format. You can see my wicked ass gross beard and
Looks
my
great,
hair.
Man. You look great. You look great. I will say that you got chirped on Rob Fett when you were on the Nation.
I did.
Talking
that
about
was very mean.
Because that was very mean of them. Yes.
Yeah.
You were using too old a profile picture. You might have to update it soon.
That costs money.
Maybe.
Those photographs for my current profile picture cost me a lot of money, so I don't have money for headshots currently, nor the haircut. You don't have another prom to go to at some point. That was your prom picture, right? No. Yeah, that was from 1997.
1997. Yeah. Make sure you hit like and subscribe on the CreaseCast Twitter or the YouTube account. Hit the bell to make sure you get notified for new episodes.
Ring that bell.
Leave a review on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, yeah, leave reviews and shit. That's important, too. Thanks,
we
everyone.
Love those 5
Sorry
stars.
for this chaos. Bye!
Bye!